Now this session is being recorded. All right, the purpose of today's defense is to give the doctoral candidate an opportunity to present his research.
Everybody else wants to.
Okay. The purpose of today's defense is to give the doctoral candidate an opportunity to present his research, demonstrating a thorough understanding of the subject matter. This presentation will allow him to articulate each aspect of the research process, fulfilling the academic requirements of the Doctor of Philosophy degree. The committee selection process involves a collaborative consultation between the student, the advisory committee, and the chair of the dissertation. A doctoral dissertation committee must consist of at least 4 members, which may include 1 member from outside the program, subject to approval by the academic dean, Dr. Linda Malone Cologne. The majority of the committee must be composed of Hampton University faculty. For the Department of Education, all members must hold a terminal degree, and the committee chair must be a Hampton University faculty member within the discipline. The advisory committee is tasked with ensuring that the dissertation meets rigorous research standards. We are responsible for approving the research topic and methodology, and we meticulously review and provide detailed feedback on manuscript drafts, assessing the validity and quality of data and evidence presented. Our collective efforts ensure that the candidate is thoroughly prepared for the oral examination and defense of his research. Before proceeding further, we would like to take a moment to express our sincere gratitude to the committee for their dedicated efforts, valuable insights, and unwavering commitment to supervising this research. Your guidance and support have been instrumental in helping the candidate to navigate the complexities of this research journey and achieve this significant milestone. Your personal investment in both the academic and professional development of the candidate has not gone unnoticed, and we deeply appreciate the time and expertise you have brought to this process. Allow me to introduce the esteemed members of this advisory committee. Dr. Martha Jallim-Hall, Associate Professor, former department chair, and the chair of this advisory committee. Dr. Wendy Cotton, Adjunct Assistant Professor in the Department of Education and the co-chair of this advisory committee. Dr. Syreeta Cason, Adjunct Assistant Professor in the Department of Education and the Department of Counseling. Dr. Zena McGee, Hampton University Endowed Professor, the Department of Sociology and the Methodologist. And Dr. Candace Robertson, Executive Director of System-Wide Programming in New Orleans Public Schools. We would like to take a moment to introduce the administrators who are present to observe this dissertation defense. Dr. Denise Charbonnet, our chair of the Department of Education, Dr. Katina Ward-James and or her representative, Director of Hampton University Online. Now, before we introduce the candidate, we'd like to take a few minutes to review the process for the oral defense of this dissertation research. The candidate will begin the formal process of an examination by introducing himself and providing an overview of his academic and professional credentials. Following the introduction, he will present his research, focusing on its relevance and significance. The presentation will cover key elements such as the introduction, statement of the problem, research methodology, findings, and implications for future research. After the candidate's presentation, the co-chair will invite questions from the committee members. And at the discretion of the co-chair or chair, questions may also be accepted from administrators, guests, and members of the audience. Once the oral defense and examination have concluded, guests can remain in the main room with the candidate while the advisory committee deliberates in a separate room. During this time, the committee will evaluate the candidate's performance on the examination. The final outcome will then be communicated to the candidate, as well as to Hampton University Online, the Department of Education, and the School of Liberal Arts and Education. Depending on the committee's decision, the candidate will be required to follow Hampton University's established guidelines to complete the final steps necessary for the degree. Colleagues and guests, it is my distinct pleasure to present to you Mr. Grady Dudley Jr. Mr. Dudley.
All right, thank you, Dr. Cotton. Greetings, everyone. Thank you all for attending the oral defense of my dissertation research. I am very excited to share the work that I have committed to for the past couple of years. My name is Dudley C. Grady Jr. I am a doctoral candidate at Hampton University. I received my bachelor's in communications from Xavier University of Louisiana and my master's in business administration from Louisiana State University in Shreveport. This year, I am celebrating my 10th year in education, serving in various roles in K-12, including enrollment, operations, and family services. I currently serve as the Director of Talent Support and Engagement for the public school district, where I lead recruitment and hiring for our central office of school, as well as lead employee engagement and development. I'm also a co-founder of Reset Camp, which is a nonprofit focused on serving inner city middle and high school students. Before we start, I want to take this time to acknowledge and thank the members of my advisory committee, Dr. Martha Jallim-Hall, who serves as the chair, and Dr. Wendy K. Cotton, who serves as co-chair of my advisory committee. Thank you all so much for your investment, for carrying me along the way, for guiding me. I appreciate both of you so much. Also to Dr. Cason, Dr. McGee, and Dr. Robertson for sharing your insight, your feedback. All of it is extreme help in helping me get into this point. The title of my dissertation is The Effects of State to Local Governance Transition on Academic Performance, Comparing Single-Site Charters and Network Charter Management Organizations. I personally lived through a governance transition. I saw how the shift from state to local control impacted not just policy, but people. So as a student, I saw how it impacted teachers and the community. And so this definitely shaped my educational journey, and that experience drove my passion for this research. Also, as charter schools evolved and education reforms continue, we do need real data on how governance changes may affect academic outcomes. Introduction of study. So the charter school movement has sparked really an ongoing debate in education for more than 3 decades. While traditional public schools operate under local governance to ensure community control, charter schools in general have greater operational autonomy. But despite their differences, charter and traditional schools share a lot in common, such as them both being tuition free, both being state funded, and accountable to statewide testing. However, the flexibility that is granted to charters has been the center of these ongoing discussions, specifically about equity, about innovation, and oversight in public education. Problem background. In the early 2000s, a southern U.S. city experienced one of the most devastating natural disasters in American history. It was an event that dramatically transformed its public education system. Prior to that disaster, the district struggled with frequent leadership turnover, academic underperformance, and financial mismanagement. In that aftermath, all but 19 of the city's 124 public schools were placed under state control or state governance. In 2016, the state required these schools to be reunified and under the local school board by 2018, but still preserving that city's charter-based framework. And that shift marked one of the most significant governance transitions in public education. Problem statement. So research shows that school districts with predominantly minority and predominantly economically disadvantaged student populations are more likely to experience state takeovers. They are usually attributed to low academic performance and or financial mismanagement. Additionally, there are 33 states in the country with laws that permit state takeovers. So even if they haven't happened yet, that potential is there. However, despite the growing popularity of state takeovers, there is a critical gap in literature and our understanding of how these schools perform academically after the shift back to local authority. So that question is really essential in shaping the future educational policy and ensuring equity and sustaining any positive outcomes that may come from state governance for students. Purpose of the study. The purpose of this quantitative correlational study was to examine the relationship between governance structure of charter schools and their academic outcomes. Specifically, this study analyzed state standardized test scores, ACT composite scores, and graduation rates from both single-site charters and network charter management organizations, or CMOs. These outcomes were compared before and after governance transition from state governance to local governance. And the goal was really to assess whether and how, if those governance models are associated with school performance over time. Significance of the study. Well, this study is significant because it examines how governance structures, specifically a shift from state to local control, relate to academic outcomes. Generally, these transitions are often framed as strategies to maintain those gains from state intervention, but there's little empirical data that exists to guide that decision-making. And so by comparing two governance periods, this study contributes to a data-driven insight that moves the conversation beyond assumptions. It also distinguishes between single-site charters and charter management organizations, and really offering a lens and understanding how different school models respond to governance change. Theoretical frameworks. So this study was grounded in two theoretical frameworks, principal agent theory and institutional theory. Using these frameworks is really essential because they provide a lens for how we interpret complex issues. In this case, the relationship between school governance and academic outcomes. These frameworks also help guide how we ask questions, how we analyze data, and how we understand patterns. And they help connect the findings to a broader educational or policy context. Principal agent theory. So this theory describes the relationship in which one party, which is the principal, delegates authority or responsibility to another party, which is the agent, to act on their behalf. And so in education, these are typically your state departments of education, your school boards, or your authorizers. And these are the entities that set goals, they allocate funding, and they establish the accountability systems. For agents, these are typically your school leaders, your charter operators, or CMOs, and they're entrusted to implement the educational policy and deliver on those academic outcomes. And so in this theory, the agent is often more knowledgeable about the day-to-day operations of that school than the principal. But there's a risk for goal misalignment because the agent may not always act in full alignment with that principal unless there is effective oversight. The second theory focuses on how organizations are influenced by rules or norms or cultural expectations of the environments in which they operate. And so they often lead them to adopting similar structures or behaviors or practices of that institution, regardless of their effectiveness. And so how it relates to this study, for state governance models, they often reflect a top-down reform approach, which is usually introduced to restore legitimacy, to restore public trust, particularly in response to chronic underperformance or financial mismanagement. These models are typically aligned with accountability norms, which, for example, are standardized testing or any other performance metrics. Operational terms defined. So these are the key terms that were a part of my study, but I will only focus on a few for the sake of time. So the first one I'll introduce is Charter Management Organization, or CMO. These are nonprofit organizations that manage or operate multiple charter schools under a centralized leadership and governance structure. And so usually they provide shared services such as curriculum, human resources, budgeting, and they promote a consistency and scalability. Local governance. So in education, this refers to a system where decision-making authority is held by a locally based entity, such as a school board or a district administrator or your charter authorizers within the community. In this context, for this study, it is important to note that local governance is not what it meant prior to state takeover, nor is it synonymous with state governance. So it refers to the district now acting primarily as a charter authorizer, who is responsible for coordinating enrollment and school accountability, ultimately reflecting a restructured governance model. So there is less direct oversight, meaning schools have more autonomy. And the last term I will define is single site. So single site charters are independently operated public schools that function on one campus, and they're governed by its own local board or nonprofit organization. Unlike CMOs, single sites do not operate on multiple campuses, and they are typically more community focused and tailored to the specific needs of their student population. Literature review. So the literature was outlined in 4 parts: the historical review of charter schools, national impact of charter schools, a comparative analysis of single site charters and charter management organizations, and the state takeover of failing school districts. Historical review. So charter schools are publicly funded but independently operated schools that function under a contract or a charter, which is an agreement with the state, or the district, or an authorizer. They are usually exempt from many of the traditional regulations associated with schools, such as with the traditional school, such as teacher certification requirements, how they select textbooks or curriculum, and allows them a greater flexibility. Those who support charter schools, they will argue that those schools are more innovative and responsive to student needs. Critics, however, will claim that they divert resources, they increase student mobility, and may even reinforce segregation. And so these tensions really shape the debate around the role of equity and charter schools in public education. National impact. So a central focus for education reformers, economists, has been how do schools affect, or organizations affect, student achievement. In some urban charter schools, specifically those who have used a no excuses model with strict discipline, extended instructional time, they've actually shown measurable gains in student performance when compared to traditional schools, according to research. However, that evidence is not the same across the board. And so, for example, in Chicago, you found that they underperformed across several metrics, including reading, math proficiency, graduation rates, and ACT scores. And so these findings really highlight the complexity of the varied outcomes of charter models, really reinforcing the need for context-specific evaluation rather than assuming that there's a one-size-fits-all approach. Comparative analysis. So over half of the schools in the United States operate as single site or independently run schools, and the remaining are affiliated with CMOs, which provide, as I mentioned earlier, the centralized services and support. And so while CMOs aim to combine the scalability of school districts with the flexibility of charter schools, they do have the risk of incurring challenges in maintaining quality as they expand and as they take over more schools. State takeovers of failing school districts. And so several states have actually used state takeovers to address chronic underperformance or financial mismanagement. And the results have generally been mixed, but sometimes promising. So for example, in Massachusetts, the Lawrence district takeover led to strong academic gains, especially in math and among ELL students. And so this was an example of it working, a positive outcome, but that hasn't been consistent across the country. So for example, Tennessee, they launched the ASD, the Achievement School District, and partnered with CMOs to manage the schools, but they faced a lot of community pushback and they actually had minimal impact. So just last year, the state, they voted to phase it out by 2026. Research methodology. So this study used a quantitative correlation research design to examine the relationship between charter school governance structures and student academic outcomes. And so this design was appropriate because it allowed for analyzing data across school populations without manipulating any of the variables. In the context of public education, where experimental control is not feasible or ethical, the correlation analysis is more practical and it's a more rigorous approach. It does not establish causation, but it is well suited for detecting patterns or predictive relationships, helping to inform policy and practice based on those associations. Research questions. So this study was guided by 5 research questions. The first 3 research questions that you see, they examine whether there are measurable associations between governance structures and the key indicators of academic outcomes. The key indicators are widely used metrics in education and accountability frameworks, making them practical and relevant. So the first 3 research questions also use a correlation approach to examine the strength and the direction of the relationship between governance structure and the academic outcomes. So research question 1 focuses on state standardized test scores. Question 2 focuses on ACT composite scores. And question number 3 focuses on graduation rates. And so these questions apply statistical tests like the point by serial correlation to determine whether the governance type, state or local, is significantly associated with differences in academic outcomes, which I'll discuss later on in the data analysis. Research questions 4 and 5 disaggregate the analysis across school levels, separating them to elementary and high school. And so this distinction allows for a more nuanced understanding of how governance effects may vary by developmental stage or instructional context. So these questions specifically use descriptive statistics to help uncover patterns in means, in score ranges, and standard deviations. And so they highlight whether governance changes are linked to more consistent or more variable performance without inferring statistical relationships. Data sources. So the secondary data used in this study was extracted from the following: the State Department of Education. They are responsible for maintaining the accountability system as well as the standardized assessment data for each school and in each district. Also the performance indicators and annual reporting protocols. The Cowan Institute, which has traditionally for the past 20 years tracked school governance in the research setting, changes in leadership, and academic outcomes. So any changes in governance or authorizers, this source was referenced. And then lastly, the local district's accountability data and analytics department, which manages the local data systems, enrollment dashboards, and school performance records. Ethical considerations. So although this study did rely on secondary data, protecting student privacy was paramount and it remained a priority. So all of the data were anonymized and the researcher verified that the data followed ethical reporting standards. It's important to note that the findings were interpreted with care to avoid reinforcing any negative stereotypes about specific schools or student groups, especially for this research setting, which is predominantly Black and with a high population of economically disadvantaged students. Limitations. So as with any research, the study did have limitations that must be acknowledged. The initial goal was to include all public charter schools from 2015 to 2024. Changes in school closures, shifts in grades offered or grades served, operator transitions, all of those factors reduce the sample size. Additionally, one of the schools in the sample merged with another school due to low performance and low enrollment. And then lastly, that final year graduation data for 23-24 was unavailable at the time of the analysis. So the researcher had to shift the outcome reporting. Delimitations. And so in order to maintain a clear scope, the study was delimited to schools that served the same grade span across both governance periods. The data from 2019 to 2021 were intentionally excluded due to atypical testing procedures and grade simulations during COVID-19. And also schools with selective admission requirements, they were intentionally excluded to ensure comparability across those governance models. Data collection. So to protect data confidentiality and integrity, the researcher de-identified school site codes by removing those direct identifiers, recoding any traceable variables, and assigning alphabetical IDs. And so as you'll see later, the schools were named School A, School B, and so forth. This process was supervised by an experienced institutional researcher who also ensured that the extraction and the anonymization of the data happened from those public reports. The data in this study did come from reputable sources, as I mentioned earlier, such as the State Department of Education, Cowan Institute, and the local district's accountability office. They follow strict reporting standards, supporting the study's validity. Data analysis. And so to analyze the relationships outlined in the research, the researcher employed both correlational and descriptive statistical methods. Specifically, a point by serial correlation test was used for research questions 1 through 3. And so this test is ideal for evaluating not only the strength, but also the direction of a relationship between a continuous variable like ACT composite scores and a dichotomous or a binary variable such as governance type. Essentially, it's a test to see if there's a connection between variables, which are the academic performance metrics, and the governance. And it tells how strong or weak that connection is. It's similar to the Pearson correlation, but it is specifically designed for cases where one of the variables is categorical, which is the independent variable in this study, the governance type. And so the variable is categorical with 2 categories, only 2 categories, such as male, female, yes or no, or in this case, state or local governance. For research questions 4 through 5, the researcher used descriptive statistics. These are useful for identifying trends or patterns without assuming causality. And they support or challenge the study's assumptions about academic performance under varying governance structures. So I'll dive a little deeper into how the data was analyzed. So the variables in this study included governance, which is served as the independent variable, and state test scores, ACT scores, and graduation rates, which served as the dependent variables. The sample size. So this was carefully calculated. So the total population size for elementary students across the 4 schools was 11,005. This included all of the test takers across all the grades in those elementary schools, which is a large number. Thankfully, this study primarily focused on ELA and math for 3rd graders and 5th graders, which reduced the sample size from 11,005 to 3,706. And so to ensure that that sample size was reliable, the researcher used RailSoft, which is their sample size calculator, which essentially asks you 3 major questions. How big is the total population? How sure or reliable do you want that to be? And how much error is acceptable? And so using a 5% margin of error, a 99% confidence level, and a population size of 11,005, the recommended sample size for statistical confidence was 626. And so the researcher sample size was 3,706, and so that exceeded that. And so they gave the researcher a lot of confidence that the sample size was a reliable representation of the population. Similarly, for high schoolers, for ACT test takers with 2,233, it surpassed the needed 584. And then graduation data from the 2 time spans totaled 2,133 students. The researcher also defined key indicators, including governance type, state versus local, charter type, single site, or network CMO, and student grade level. So these classifications were essential to analyzing the outcomes for third and fifth graders in their standardized test scores and ACT scores for high school students. And then lastly, to account for annual fluctuations from 2015 to 24, the percentage changes in academic outcomes, they were computed using a consistent formula. And so this formula was used to track how academic outcomes changed each year from 2015 to 2024. So the calculating that percentage change was really like asking how much do these things go up or down compared to last year. And so this formula helps to measure year-over-year growth or decline in test scores and graduation rates, to spot any spikes or dips in performance, and to ensure that the results weren't just due to random yearly variation. Demographics. So this chart shows the demographics of the research sample for the 2023-2024 year. As you can see, as a very high minority population, as well as a high population of economically disadvantaged students. I also have a flow chart to explain how those schools are categorized. And so this top tier is the governance or local, the governance or the authorizer, which is state local governance. The charter school operator, which is second tier, defining whether it's a single site or network CMO. And then lastly, 2 elementary schools and 2 high schools for each operator. Okay, the research findings. Research question number 1, is there a relationship between the governance structure and state standardized test scores? The null hypothesis states that there is no statistically significant relationship between the governance structure and state standardized test scores. So a point by serial analysis found a weak negative relationship between governance structure and student performance on state standardized tests. Specifically, ELA scores had a correlation of negative 0.169, and math scores had correlation of negative 0.188, both statistically significant. And so while that relationship exists, it is weak, meaning that the governance type may not be a major factor in influencing test outcomes. As you can see, there is a p-value of 0.000. You will see this again in the findings in the slides coming up. So this denotes that the actual value was small, so that value was rounded for cleaner reporting. So as a result, for research question 1, we reject the null hypothesis and conclude that there is a statistically significant relationship between governance and academic performance. Research question number 2, is there a relationship between the governance structure and average ACT composite scores? The null hypothesis states that there is no statistically significant relationship between the governance structure and ACT composite scores. So a point by serial correlation revealed a moderate negative relationship between governance structure and ACT composite scores. So based on these findings, we again reject the null hypothesis and conclude that there is a statistically significant relationship between governance structure and ACT performance. Question number 3, research question number 3, is there a relationship between the governance structure and graduation rates? The null hypothesis states that there is no statistically significant relationship between the governance structure and graduation rates. A point by serial correlation showed a weak negative relationship between governance structure and graduation rates. That correlation was negative 0.192 with a sample of 2,133 students, and the results were statistically significant because of this p-value, meaning that the relationship is unlikely to happen due to chance. And so while governance appears to have some influence, that weak correlation or weak association suggests that it's not a major factor in graduation outcomes. Still, we do reject the null hypothesis and recognize that there is a statistically significant relationship. So the following questions 4 and 5, use descriptives. Research question 4, how do elementary outcomes under state governance compared to those under local governance? The research assumption is that elementary charter school academic outcomes are higher when under local governance. But actually, the The English score analysis shows that charter schools under state governance, specifically single sites, outperform those under local control. And so state governed single site charter schools had a higher average ELA score of 744.32 and a larger standard deviation of 69.10. And the scores range from 650 to 1253. So it reflects a stronger overall performance, but there was more variation among the students. Comparing to local governance, they scored slightly lower with an average or a mean of 729.52, but there was a tighter score range and there was a smaller standard deviation. So in short, state governance may raise performance levels, but local governance appears to promote more consistent results. Same thing for math. The math analysis showed that charter schools under state governance, specifically single sites, outperform those under local control. And so these findings suggest that while state governance may be linked to higher performance, it also brings greater variability in student outcomes. And then the last question, research question number 5, how do the high school academic outcomes under state governance compare to those under local governance? The research assumption was that high school academic outcomes are higher when under local governance. Graduation rates revealed a lot of differences among the schools in the study. So school F led the group with a 81.9% graduation rate and suggests that single site charter schools under state governance may foster stronger academic outcomes. School E followed with a 79% rate. School H, on the other hand, had the lowest rate of 53.1, falling significantly below its peers with consistently low performance under both state and local governance. And so these differences really underscore how governance structure and school model can influence, but do not uniformly determine graduation success. And then lastly, descriptives were used for ACT scores. And this, for this research question, how do the high school academic outcomes under state governance compare to those under local governance as it relates to ACT scores? There was a clearer trend. And so students under state governance consistently outperformed those under local governance. Also, reinforcing previous trends, the students attending a single site charter school scored slightly higher on the ACT. And so these findings suggest that both governance model and charter school type can influence college readiness outcomes as measured by the ACT. Discussion. Implications for policy and practice. So based on the findings, policymakers must balance the urgency for academic improvement with the need for long-term stability. So essentially, improvement and planning for long-term stability of academic improvements must happen simultaneously. Also, as I mentioned earlier, a one-size-fits-all approach will not work. Instead, transition strategies, those responsible for those strategies, have to account and consider both the type of charter school and the local context to ensure that those changes enhance and not hinder student success. And so to deepen our understanding of governance transitions in charter schools, several future research directions were recommended. First, using a longitudinal student cohort design. This allows researchers to track individual student progress over time as opposed to schools. And so really uncovering the effects of governance change, mobility patterns, and delayed academic impacts for specific students. Second, it's essential to examine equity and subgroup performance. And so in this research setting, which was predominantly Black and predominantly has a high population of economically disadvantaged students, future research can include Black, Hispanic, low-income, ELL, if there is a more diverse, demographically diverse district to help improve policy relevance. Third, researchers should investigate school climate and organizational culture. And so this study primarily focused on academic outcomes and those key indicators, but also focusing on teacher retention and staff satisfaction and a broader learning environment. Understanding how these non-academic factors could serve as early indicators of future academic outcomes. Fourthly, studies should analyze financial mismanagement and resource allocation. And so as I stated earlier, state governance or state takeovers are usually triggered by academic underperformance and financial mismanagement. And so comparing budget transparency and fiscal practices across CMOs and single sites can really reveal if there are any governance related disparities as far in terms of resource distribution. And then lastly, the research should extend beyond the immediate post-pandemic years. And so the second part of this study, those second study periods, 21 through 24, they were obviously after COVID. And so COVID introduced some challenges that made it a little challenging to isolate those governance effects. And so having a longer timeline will better inform sustainable, equitable education policy moving forward. In conclusion, this correlational quantitative study examined the relationship between charter school governance and academic outcomes. The analysis revealed a statistically significant negative correlation between governance type and student performance in ELA, in math, ACT composite scores, and graduation rates. While state governance was associated with higher peak performance, it also came with greater variability in student outcomes. On the other hand, local governance appeared to promote more consistent and more stable academic performance across the board. So these findings really do underscore the complexity of educational governance and highlight the need for nuanced policy strategies that consider both performance and equity. This is an abbreviated list of my references. And that concludes my presentation. My incredible dissertation co-chair, Dr. Wendy K. Cotton, will now moderate the question and answer session. Thank you all.
Thank you so much, Mr. Dudley Grady Jr. Thank you for an outstanding presentation of your research. Your work has clearly demonstrated a very nuanced understanding of the subject matter and an impressive command of the quantitative research process, particularly using archival data. This was outstanding. So at this time, I am going to go to our committee members. Actually, do I see Dr. Katina Ward-James? Yes, I know she's stretched thin and we have lots of defenses going on across the campus today. So I'm gonna go to our university administrator, director of Hampton University Online, Dr. Katina Ward-James, for her comment.
Thank you so much, Dr. Cotton. I just want to commend all of you. This was great. I want to commend the committee chair. I want to commend the committee on a job well done. And to let you know also, congratulations to you for reaching this milestone. Please don't hesitate to contact the HU Online office if there's anything we can do to support you. We're here to assist you, and we're just very excited about what's next in your journey. So congratulations and take care.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ward-James.
Thank you.
All right, now our committee. Let's see who we have here with us. Dr. Candace Robertson.
Yes, ma'am.
We will allow you to go first, if you will.
So I just have one question, Dudley. Considering your findings within the context of where we are currently in education, how has what you've uncovered relate to our current political climate, or can attribute to some level of impact on our current political climate?
Hey, thank you, Dr. Robertson. So there are two things that I didn't mention in my presentation, but I actually did have a chance to discuss in my paper. Side note, I did have to take some time away from my paper because the current administration gave me so much material just within the past few weeks. But so I'll talk about two things that I found relevant based on the study. And so the potential elimination of the Department of Education definitely poses some serious risk for populations like this research study and charter-based systems. They are highly dependent on federal oversight and federal funding. Also responsible for ensuring equity in all of these civil rights and all of these other things. A couple of weeks ago, maybe at the beginning of the month, the U.S. the Secretary of Education announced that they would be rolling back funding for schools that got an extension from the previous administration, COVID-19 funding. They were relief funding. This was particularly alarming because obviously it affected everybody, but for schools that have high minority populations, schools that have high economically disadvantaged populations, that could be frightening. That could be a heavy task to take. I would say secondly, this hyper focus on DEI, and however the administration wants to define DEI, that is significant because, again, the findings based on a high economically disadvantaged population. When you talk about DEI funding or rolling back funding for schools that participate in DEI, that could affect Title I funding. So for those of you who are not in K-12, who are not familiar with DEI funding, or not DEI funding, with Title I funding, this is funding that is specifically focused on serving students, schools that have a high population of low-income students. And so it's going to be difficult for those schools to supplement that funding. They're going to have to get really creative or really conservative with how they manage their funds. And so those are the two things that I see in the political climate that could affect schools like this research setting.
Thank you.
Is that it, Dr. Robertson?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Now we're going to go to Dr. Tarji Kinsey, who is standing in for Dr. Zena McGee. As I mentioned before, we have several defenses going on across the campus, and some of us are stretched very thin. So Dr. McGee, while she could not be here in person for this defense, Mr. Grady, she did send her comments. So Dr. Kinsey, do you have those? You don't have them. You got them? Lord Jesus, I'm sorry. I got the wrong person.
That's okay, but I am standing in on behalf of Dr. Syreeta Cason. And so first and foremost, Mr. Dudley, you have done a phenomenal job, and we do appreciate all that you have done towards this. So early congratulations to you. Dr. Syreeta Cason also sends the same wishes as well as her regards, along with two questions. The first question to you is, given that state-governed schools demonstrated a higher ACT score and graduation rates, what factors do you believe contribute to their relative success compared to locally governed schools?
A great question. My instinct says oversight. So, as I mentioned earlier, local governance post 2018 is not equitable to state governance. And so local governance in this setting is more of a portfolio authorizer and a regulator. And so they oversee the contracts for charters, they oversee the equity in that access. I think, and they also intervene when schools are not meeting their expectations. Is different than the state governance, which really operated as a manager. And so thinking about, even going back to one of my theories, institutional theory, I'm thinking about that top-down accountability model, which focused heavily on testing performance. And so the state emphasized a really rapid improvement approach, and schools were really, whether they stayed open or not, was really dependent on that raw quantitative data. I think that's also why you see less variability and more consistency on a local level, because I think those priorities about school performance are expanded. So that's what I would attribute, states having higher ACT scores to that.
Thank you for that. And her last question is, how did you ensure the reliability and validity of the secondary data used from multiple sources? And were there any limitations or inconsistencies in the data sets from 2015 to 18 and 2021 to 2024?
Okay, thank you for that question, Dr. Kinsey. I was able to compare the data across those sources. So that did give me a lot of confidence that the data was accurate. Seeing what the state was saying compared to what the local district was saying, even seeing what the school reported. And I attribute that consistency to how the reporting structure is set up, because all of these entities, they really do rely on each other to maintain accurate data. As far as limitations, those graduation rates were not available for that last year, for that final academic year. And so I accounted for that by shifting the study period back one academic year, which I felt was appropriate because that academic year was still under local governance. And so instead of using 22, 23, 24, I used 21, 22, and 23, which was still under that local governance, separating it from the state governance years.
Excellent job. And again, congratulations to you. You've done a wonderful job. Dr. Cotton, I will pass it back to you.
Thank you, Dr. Kinsey. Mr. Grady, Mr. Grady. I'm always getting your first name and your last name confused, even now, after all this time with you. But first of all, I just want to commend you again on such a phenomenal job with this research. And I want to just ask you why? Why? And I think having had conversations with you, I of course understand the attraction to conducting research that's close to your heart and close to your own lived experiences. But what drew you to this? And that's one question. And why did you decide to do quantitative over qualitative?
Great question. Thank you, Dr. Cotton. So I would say that what drew me to this was really seeing the potential and how this could affect communities across the country. Once I even experiencing a state takeover, I was not aware until I started doing research of these things happening primarily to predominantly Black or minority communities. And so I am personally really passionate about that. And so that's what really drew me in, having that personal experience and also just being passionate about helping people in underserved communities. The question about quantitative versus qualitative is, so I am a writer. My background is communications. I love to write. So it was not natural for me to lean towards quantitative, but I thought specifically for this study, I understand that a lot of the conversations about state governance, about charter schools, is really discourse and not necessarily data. And so I wanted to make sure that my contribution was really data driven, and so that people who had those conversations or had that discourse, that they can use some quantitative information and that it's not based on any assumptions. I do believe that a qualitative approach would be beneficial in future studies. Understanding how school leaders, our CMOs, our teachers have experienced their experiences through this transition, but I did feel strongly that a data-driven focus had to precede that.
Okay. So I'm going to push back just a little bit on that.
Okay.
Just the way that you framed it, because their lived experiences is still data. And so even I get what you're saying. You want to put some numbers behind it.
Yes,
you want
yes.
to quantify the conversations that people are having, and people are usually pretty strong about it. As a matter of fact, I was just having this conversation with my aunt about her granddaughter having gone to charter schools in the Metro Atlanta area, and all three of my nieces matriculated through charter schools their whole career, but under the Atlanta public schools. And so there are so many nuances there about charter schools and how they are governed, that, you know, we had that conversation. People feel very strongly one way or another typically about it. But yeah, even the qualitative methodologies would add something to your numbers that we miss. And
Yes.
so, and you know, since you are a writer, and it's obvious that you are, and you're a great communicator, maybe that's something you will consider. If not, we might have to have somebody replicate your study and give us that that other piece, that thick, rich description. But congratulations again. I will not prolong the time. I'm going to defer to Dr. Martha Jallim-Hall, the chair of this research study, so that she can present her questions and comments as well as those of Dr. Zena McGee. Thank you so much, Mr. Dudley. Grady.
Thank you, Dr. Cotton.
Thank you so much, Dr. Cotton. Good afternoon, everyone. Mr. Grady, I finally said your name right. After 3 years, I've called you Mr. Dudley for 3 years, I think. Thank you so much for an outstanding presentation. I want to let you know that we are indeed very proud of you, proud of your research, your presentation, and of course, your findings. This research is very important, especially in the days and times that we live in. And I think it fills the gap in the literature about these charter schools. You know, generally people look at the scores and the effectiveness of the operation component, but very few people look at the governance structure. And I think that this research is significant. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
You also mentioned in your presentation that you had a unique perspective as a student and now as an employee as well. Can you share a little bit about that?
Yes. So I experienced a governance transition when I was in high school. And so that transition felt pretty abruptly. I understood that how I was taught, the experience that I had in school was different post that transition. So prior to that transition, I attended a magnet school, and then post transition, I attended a charter school. And so I definitely saw the charter school having more flexibility, more autonomy, and just a freedom that I realized that my traditional school did not have. As an employee, working in a setting that governs, authorizes charter schools, it has been interesting to see how the landscape of the city operating with charter schools, and many of the people really being in support of traditional public schools. But I do think with this data, it makes me think two things in ways I can really, contribute or use this research moving forward. I would say one way I work in human resources. And so along with hiring, I do have some input in, the structure of what our district does and how our staff support schools. And so with this data, seeing those differences in operators, it really does inform me how I think about how central office supports those schools of varying charter types. Specifically, if there are certain positions or departments that I think should lead work. I also have the opportunity to serve on the charter application committee. And so in these applications, people that are submitting for a charter, they really have to submit their blueprint on how they're going to ensure that students have success. And so I do think this study definitely informs how I interpret those applications moving forward, to see what they would add to our portfolio of schools.
Very good. I wanted to add to Dr. Cotton's questions about secondary data. There's so many limitations to using the secondary data analysis. Why was this approach the best for your study?
Why was the approach for using secondary data the best for the study?
Yes.
I think that for this study, a lot of, kind of like what I was saying earlier, I do think a lot of the dialogue about governance structures in charter schools has been misconstrued. I do think having that secondary data really supported, and the secondary data being public information really supported what I was trying to do in making sure that the study was representing what was not necessarily what was already out there, but what was out there but may have been misunderstood. And so having access to that data at the state level and at the local level, being able to compare it, I felt that was really helpful because it really helped me ensure that there was some validity and reliability to that data. And also understanding what the research setting is doing around public trust, and making sure that there is a level of transparency. And so I wanted to add that layer of using secondary data as a level of using, or as a nod to adding to the transparency about the performance of those schools.
So in the literature, in the literature review, were you surprised based on your findings when you reflected back on chapter 2 of either the process or the effectiveness or any aspect of your study? Did anything surprise you based on the literature and the critical analysis of all the previous other studies conducted on the governance structure of charter schools?
That's a great question. I think what surprised me the most was actually seeing how single site charters consistently perform better than network charter schools. As I mentioned, network charter schools, they typically do have the resources and have their own central office that single site schools don't have. So for single sites, all of their support is typically inside of the building that they're working in. But going back to the definition and going back to previous literature, it does mention how one of the challenges for CMOs is being able to maintain that quality as they expand. And in single sites, they are more likely to be more flexible and really tailoring their approach to their student population. So with CMOs, you might have schools in Texas and New York, and they might attempt to have the same practices without consideration of that local context. And so I think that's what surprised me the most, because I would think that the schools that traditionally have more resources and more support would perform better. But in actuality, schools that have a closeness to that local context actually performed better in this study.
So I have a few comments from Dr. McGee for you. So, Mr. Grady, your study makes a valuable contribution to a study of educational governance, academic performance of schools after transitioning from state to local control. As noted, most existing literature emphasizes the period of state oversight. So your work is both timely and also significant within the context of the growing policy and interests in particular. One of your key strengths has also lies within the integration of empirical findings with the theoretical framework. The theory is particularly apt as it illuminates the inherent challenges in educational governance, misaligned incentives, and information asymmetrics. Your application of theory is just a simple outcome comparison, but you give a more holistic understanding of why schools may perform differently under varied governance structures. Your work challenges narratives that the charter's status inherently fosters innovation. As you move forward in this process of publishing your work, consider that while the descriptive findings clearly enhance our understanding, future research could strengthen the analysis through more quasi-experimental designs to better isolate the causal effects of governance transitions. Also, for the future, think more analyses of how different student subgroups may fare under the state versus local governance. For example, race, socioeconomic status, or disability. This will deepen our understanding of equity impacts. Excellent work.
Thank you, Dr. McGee.
Yes. So, Dr. Cotton,
Yes,
this
ma'am.
concludes my questions and Dr. McGee's questions and answers. Thank you so much, Mr. Grady.
Thank you so much, Dr. Jallim-Hall. Dr. Cason, even though Dr. Kinsey read your questions, I just wanted to give you an opportunity to address the candidate, and thank you for working so hard to be in two defenses that were happening concurrently. So thank you for that extra effort, Dr. Cason.
So, Mr. Grady, I'm pretty sure you did a wonderful presentation. My apologies again, burning the candle at both ends right now. My questions were based on your presentation, on your manuscript versus your presentation. So since I wasn't here, and I'm pretty sure you answered those questions accordingly. So with that, I am complete with my thoughts, Dr. Cotton. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Dr. Denise Charbonnet, the chair of the Department of Education, and this study was in her backyard, so to speak, her and Dr. McGee. So Dr. Charbonnet, please.
Well, Mr. Dudley, this was a fantastic topic, very timely, on the cutting edge of what we're looking at in the United States today with the charter movement versus what we have in traditional public schools. And so I'm just really, really pleased that you did this, and it's outstanding work. So thank you for that. And I truly hope that you publish the results of your study, because I know a lot of people are interested in what you've researched and what you found through your research. But I'd like for you just to comment a little bit on the overall quality that we see, because these different structures are give and take. The charter, the traditional schools, what they provide in terms of structure and governance, they both can't and don't do the same things. How do you think the quality of what students receive is affected, or maybe is not affected in the charter schools, being that there's a different way that they staff the schools and that they look at the kinds of outcomes that are expected? So could you comment on that?
Thank you, Dr. Charbonnet. I would say it's hard to give it a definitive answer because all of these schools are so different. I think that's that's really the basis of the charter schools, that they do have the autonomy to really design what they should be. I think that's what, as a central office employee, that's what we try to do or offer, is having a wide portfolio of different types of schools. I will say some of the key factors that many would attribute to academic success would be that traditional schools typically require teachers to be certified. Mostly charter schools do not. Traditional schools also have probably less flexibility around curriculum. Charter schools have a lot of flexibility. And so I think it varies in terms of quality. One thing I would say that I appreciate about charter schools is their ability to think outside of the box, is their ability to be innovative. And so it's probably more likely for you to see the introduction of different types of curriculum, such as, I don't know, for example, AI. It's probably easier to get that into a charter school than it is to a traditional school. And so having that flexibility does, and that ability to innovate does offer a lot of potential that could be really exciting for public education.
Well, I appreciate all the work, and I just wanted you to know that before I left the New Orleans area and moved to Virginia, I did work for a couple of years in a consultant role and other roles at Einstein Charter School. So,
Nice.
yes, and helped to influence them moving into the middle school arena. Part of my work was helping to design that. So yes, I do see the work that you're doing, and since the area has taken this path, I think it's proven to be the North Star for people in this line of work with charters. So thank you for all the work you're doing and what you've done in your research with charter schools.
Thank you, Dr. Charbonnet. I appreciate that.
Thank you, Dr. Charbonnet. I have one more person. She is a graduate of this program, Dr. Deanna Williams. And I'm calling on her particularly because of her work in the charter school system for the last several years, actually. As a matter of fact, she was a teacher when my nieces were matriculating through the Drew charter schools in Atlanta. So Dr. Williams, she has one question for you, if you don't mind. Thank you so much.
Good afternoon to the committee and everyone else who is on the call, and certainly good afternoon, Mr. Grady. I also want to start by commending you on this research. As someone who is a researcher and a practitioner, and the majority of my experience has been in charter networks, I do have this particular question for you. I know you said that you work in HR, and you were talking about how you would practically use this particular research, right?
Yes.
I want to agree with the fact that a lot of times when you're looking at states and you're looking at districts and you're looking at schools, they want to see the quantitative data. I'm a qualitative researcher, but I agree. We want to see that quantitative data. And so I think that that's one of the reasons, not the only, but that's one of the reasons why this research is powerful. Here is my question. Yes, if you go on and the committee says that your work passes, Hampton will tell you you have to get the work published. But what innovative ways are you going to get this research in the hand of charter principals, right, who are making certain decisions? What way are you going to get this research in the hands of states who are operating charter schools, who are making certain decisions about these particular schools. This is great. And I really want to think about ways you can get it in people's hands, because I sit and I speak to principals all the time, and we talk about how do we move the needle? What does the research say? We talk about evidence strategies, and this needs to be in the hands of certain people who are making practical decisions every day that can change students' lives. So other than your work being published, how else do you think you can get your research in the proper people's hands?
Thank you, Dr. Williams. That's a great question. I have not thought about how I would get it in their hands, but I do think there are some things that I've thought about that are definitely relevant. So thinking about state takeovers, to answer your question about how to get it in states' hands, state takeovers are generally meant to be temporary. They're not supposed to be permanent solutions. They're meant to improve outcomes and then return to local governance. And so I referenced earlier about two things happening in tandem: that performance improvement and long-term planning for sustainability, if there are positive outcomes, should be happening in terms of state takeovers. I think that I would be advising states to be incredibly intentional about any transitions or any planned transitions. They should be advising and preparing local governance to have a healthy environment to when those schools return to them. I think that, you know, in those cases where the state takeovers are happening due to underperformance or financial mismanagement, those are the things that should be addressed. So how did we even get here, and how do we prevent ourselves from getting back in those places? I will also say that, to your point, getting in multiple people's hands, stakeholders have to be involved in that transition plan, and so it shouldn't just be governmental officials or people that have these top roles in these positions. It has to be community members, it has to be educators, it has to be school leaders, and people that will be directly impacted by those transitions. And so I do have to think more about how to get it in their hands, but I do know what I would advise them to do, because transitions affect everybody. Like, even thinking about my role at the central office level, not even thinking about governance transitions, but even transitions what happened with school closures or moving a school building. Like, this affects those transitions in any case, affect multiple people. They affect teachers, they affect school leaders, they affect parents, and most importantly, they affect students. And so, yes, I agree with you. I think about how to get this out there in the ethos.
Thank you so much, Mr. Dudley, and thank you, Dr. Deanna Williams, for your question. At this time, this brings us to the close of this portion. If you would like to remain in the main room while the committee deliberates, please feel free to do so. You're in the capable hands of our new Dr. Kimberly Coward, who will moderate the main room while the committee goes to deliberate. And Mr. Grady, you will stay in the main room until we are ready for you. Thank you, everyone, for coming. Feel free to converse with the candidate while we are deliberating.
Hey, Dudley, man, look, just want to say congratulations to you. Great presentation. And I'm proud of you, man. Very proud of you. Peace.
Is he still here?
I thought he was.
He should be. I just.
Oh, they moved me to the room.
There he is.
There he is.
Now, see.
Okay.
Okay.
I had to leave the room
You
myself.
might want to say that again.
So, hey, Dudley, man, my ace, say, brother, man, I'm immensely proud of you, brother. You have done an amazing job. You worked your behind off on this presentation, on this research, man. And I believe that your research is going to make a difference in our kids today So, brother, I'm so proud of you, man. And look, I got a couple of drinks for you, man, when this thing become official, brother. But I love you, man. You're my ace, and good job, brother.
Thank you, Rob. Appreciate it.
So we talking fraternity, Dudley? Are we talking?
Yes. Don't be fooled by the blue.
I was gonna say,
black and gold.
the blue may be giving off something, but
No, I'm a black and gold band through and through over here.
okay. I see. Okay, I missed it. I was trying to catch it. So how do you feel?
Relieved. I've been a bit anxious. I've been excited all day. But it's a weird feeling that I've been committed to this for the past several years, and this is the point that you try to get to. So
Right. Oh,
yeah, it's a good.
Kenzie, you don't have to raise your hand. You can aid in this moderation. I know you know, Dudley. So go ahead on and unmute and do your thing.
I came back from the deliberation room, Mr. Dudley, just because I wanted to be in this space with you so that I can tell you I am so, so proud of you. It is taking all I got not to bust out crying and probably roll around on the ground a couple of times. You did a phenomenal job presenting the work that you put in front of us and the work that you put in behind the scenes. That I just want the world to know that you are destined to do something great. You are meant to be something big, and these results are going to go so far. So I know that Dr. Williams asked you, how are you going to get it in the hands of people? Don't worry about it, because you are doing the Lord's work, honey, and it will reach everybody's hands the way it's supposed to. So congratulations again. I know you're going to go far, and I'm just looking forward to being able to call you the good doctor. So
Amen.
Congratulations again.
Thank you, Dr.
That may be 10 minutes and counting. So we okay, go ahead. Go ahead, Miss Nichols. Miss Nicholas. Oh, I thought she wanted to say something.
Come back with the wording.
I'm so glad I got host privileges. I have to mute my family. They keep jumping up.
Oh, I thought they wanted to talk with you.
I don't think so.
They're gonna ask when they get back, but who do you have on?
I see that my DP has his hand up.
Okay. I hate to interrupt your DP, but I need to steal the candidate, and please join me in the breakout room, Mr. Dudley Grady.
Mr. Grady.
Okay, wait. Let me
These
see.
two first names are getting me.
How do I? Let me see how. Okay, I got it.
You got it?
Yes.
All right.
So like DP gonna have to wait.
He'll be all right.
I was about to say, I think he purposely ignored Tyrone, but love you, Tyrone.
Yeah, he'll be all right. I totally understand. They can take him away as many times they want, as long as he come back to the doctor. Good. Absolutely.
All right. That part.
Yeah, what cohort is he in? What cohort did Grady come from?
Lucky 13.
So y'all are 13.
Is that it? Lucky 13, huh? I wonder which cohort you're from.
Okay. So they're just on 13. Okay.
Well, we did some 16s.
Did y'all?
A few of them.
Okay.
3 or 4. So, I'm 14, so they, a couple of them went before me. But, that's 3 years. That's 3 years. 4 for me. And I'm gonna tell you what Dr. Johnson tell us. Be encouraged. Be nice too. I see you rubbing your mouth trying to say. I think it'll be recorded, Asila. I just want to put that out there.
I am as encouraged as Jesus will allow me to be. How about that?
Are you on spring break?
No, we are still here kicking, and Lord knows tomorrow starts our spring break.
Okay, all right. Chapter 2 is coming.
Oh, yeah, I'm gonna have to sit down and write it. I am. I know I am. I was telling somebody else, I've read about 30 books and none of them relate to anything dissertation related. We just have to pray. That's where I am in my life. That's where I am. And once I finish, hopefully tomorrow will be a good day. There will be peace in the schoolhouse. And then I can go.
That's the benefit of not having to go into an office where you can control your calendar.
I can control it. I can deny it all. That don't mean people knock on his door all the time. That's what has happened the entire time.
All right.
All right.
Are we all back? What about Dr. Robertson? Is she back? There she is.
Okay.
All right. Colleagues and candidates, thank you all so much. Thank you all so much for spending your time this afternoon with us. I will turn it over to Dr. Wendy Cotton to make the presentation. Dr. Cotton?
Yes, colleagues and guests, thank you so much for joining us today. And we are pleased to introduce you to Dr. Dudley C. Grady Jr. Congratulations, young man. You deserve to be here and you did a phenomenal job and we are so pleased. So do you have, Dr. Grady, are you here?
He's here.
I'm here. I'm frozen.
Any comments, Dr. Grady, before we move to ask some of your colleagues and your family members? There you go.
Oh goodness. I want to thank, I know my parents are on here. I dedicated my manuscript to my parents. Anybody knows me, if I talk too long about my parents, I'm gonna start boo-hooing. So I appreciate, all of that they've done for me. I think my aunt is on, who's kind of been my godmother. Also my second grade teacher. My friends, I see on here a lot of my colleagues from work. I see a lot of my frat brothers, my cohort members, Lucky 13. I just appreciate all of you, just all your support. You know that I have dedicated so much of my time and my energy to this over the past couple of years. And so I'm really grateful to be able to get to this point. I told my line brother the other day that I had to find another reason for why I didn't want to go outside. That was cool, but I will come up with something. But thank you all so much for taking your time out of the day to support me. I appreciate it.
Did your parents want to speak? Are they still on here?
They are. I don't know.
Okay.
If they are, they'll come off of mute. They kind of shy, but
okay. All right. Well, we just wanted to give them
wait, they came off of
opportunity.
mute.
That's right. This is your day, so let them speak. Right.
We just wanted, this is your mother, Sylvia Grady. Just wanted to congratulate you. I'm just so happy and so proud of you. Okay, come on, Dad.
Dudley, you know what I told you yesterday?
Yes, Father. I will not mess up your name.
Hello, this is your auntie. I am so proud of you. God
Thank y'all.
Junior.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right. Okay, doctor. Yes, celebrate you.
Thank y'all.
All right. Well, I think this is it, everybody. We hate to leave you, but congratulations, Doc. Congratulations.
Congratulations, Dr. Grady, and
thank you.
All of the other newly minted doctors, all the names. I saw Dr. Devin Blackwell, Dr. Coward. Oh, there's so many.
Farr's on here, Kia.
Dr. Farr, yes, I saw Kia, Dr. Farr. Quite a few of you. Thank you all so much. This has been an incredible, if you notice, if you have attended anything in the last 2 weeks, you know this has been a marathon for us. And we thank you for your patience there's a lot of work required to get students to graduation. It's not just the presentation, there's a whole lot happening behind the scenes, and we do thank you. You took time out of your days to celebrate all of our candidates, and we really want to thank you for that. Congratulations again, Dr. Grady. I got it right. So thank you all, and we do have some tomorrow, and we will be sending out the other announcements. So
Tomorrow?
You
meant next week, didn't you?
Syreeta has some tomorrow.
Oh, okay. I was like, Lord,
I
who
think
else
Dr.
am I missing?
Charbonnet may have some Friday. I just look for the announcement.
Yeah, that's true. That is true. Look for the
So colleagues
announcements.
and friends, thank you so much for coming and have a wonderful evening. Take
All
care.
right.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Bye-bye.
Uh-huh.